once you get some momentum going, do what you can to keep it going. That's going to be the big thing. Over the next handful of months, you're going to start to gain some momentum. And then you're going to have those days where something falls off, you get a little bit off track, you get a little sideways, get back on, keep the momentum going. That's huge.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Grit Meets Growth podcast, where we bring you inspiration and insights focused on getting uncomfortable, making things happen, and creating a magnetic life. If you enjoy the messages you're hearing here, please leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening on, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes of the podcast. With that, let's get after it.
First episode 2023. How's your day starting off, man?
Fantastic. Super excited for this year, building upon a great 2022. Excited for our conversation today, talking about authenticity and being authentic.
We had some lively conversation about this as we were getting prepped, we were getting ready, and so this promises to be a really good episode, and one that we can all take to heart and learn a little bit from in the process. So,
and I think it really all starts with definition of what authentic is.
Let it rip, man. This is a good definition.
Being actually and exactly what is claimed. Being authentic is being actually and exactly what you claim. In other words, do what you say you're going to do and be who you say you are. It's pretty simple, right? But I think it's a little more challenging to execute than that.
As we were having conversations about this, you brought up a compliment that you had received from an old boss that really hit home for me. Share a little bit about that quick.
Yeah, I remember him saying to me, we were kind of out partying. This is years ago. We were kind of out company party. We were all doing a little drinking, and he says to me, what's really great about you, Cathers? He says, you're the same person now as you are when you're working in the office, as you are when you're outside the office, when you're drinking. Like, you're the same person no matter what situation we're in. You always have the same demeanor. You always are authentic. And that's really stuck with me. That was 15 years ago. And I try to live my life that way, to be authentic, to be who I say I am, to do what I say I'm going to do. And live it simply, I guess.
I think what's interesting about that is the second you start to go down that path of what does authentic look like, we all have people in our circles who are authentic. They're an example of what you just talked about, where they're the same no matter what. Every situation they're in, their demeanor and how they show up is consistent. And then you have people in your circle who aren't, who maybe show up one way in front of one group of people, they show up another way in a situation. There's a disconnect between who they are authentically, who that genuine version of themselves is, and how they show up and how they present themselves in certain situations. And I think that's where this conversation about authenticity gets real. Is it's a word that's been hijacked. Everybody wants to be authentic. That's all anybody talked about 2021, 2022. It's been like a big buzzword. It's diluted what it means to be genuine. And it's easy to sniff out those people who aren't genuine, who say one thing on one side, but when nobody's looking, they're a little bit different, or they act not the same as, they don't walk the talk.
But I also think that in the way we operate today as a society, we don't always get that chance to see that, right? We live in a digital world where we're only seeing people's digital persona. We never get to know the real them. And I would bet that many times that digital persona and their actual persona are two different things.
Just hearing you say that makes me sad. And it makes me sad. My kids spend a lot of time on social media, and I'll be honest, so do I. I spend plenty of time there. everybody I know spends a lot of time on social media. It's where
Right.
we connect. And I'm going to use air quotes when I say connect, because you can't really connect with somebody if all you're seeing is the best version of themselves on social. Like all the messy stuff doesn't get talked about and doesn't get presented. And then sometimes when it does, it gets presented with an ulterior motive. Like, oh, here's my messy pieces, but really I just want you to like me more because I'm messy. Like there's authenticity and being real takes a lot of forms, and digitally it's really hard to pull that off and to be authentic, because there's all that pressure to show up a certain way, act a certain way, do things a certain way, because we care about what other people think. I think that play on authenticity, I think as long as we care what other people think and we're trying to present ourselves in a light that's going to make other people like us or going to make other people want to be around us, and we're more worried about what other people think than who we actually are, I think that's it's a tightrope walk that all of us will fall off of at some point.
Well, and it goes back to our recipe, John, that we talk about here on Grit Meets Growth, and the recipe for living a magnetic life, right? We've talked about this back episodes ago where we covered the 7 kind of components of that. And number 3 is stop caring what others think and what others say. When I read that, when I say that, when I hear those words, it really brings me back to being myself. I have to get comfortable with myself first and foremost. I have to know who I am first and foremost. Who is my authentic self? What is it that I want to present? And when I do that, and I'm comfortable with that, and I operate that way, I don't care what other people say, because I know what genuine is to me. I know how I'm operating in that situation. You know, there's a lot of this conversation lately coming out of the Andy Frisella camp, talking about personal excellence is the greatest rebellion. I got to get comfortable. I got to fix myself first. I have to get comfortable in my own skin, know who I am, know how I operate. The rest of it will take care of itself.
I think a lot of it too comes back to defining. I'll play off that a little bit. You can't create personal excellence in your life until you've defined what personal excellence means to you. And this goes back to the authenticity conversation. This is not what personal excellence means to 5 people outside of this room right now. What does it mean to you? When you think about personal excellence and you're framing it up for yourself, what does that actually mean? How would you define it for yourself? And then how are you going to live that out? And until we've spent some time thinking about who we want to become, what that looks like, we can't create a mold for creating that. Once we are able to create a mold for creating that, now we can pour ourselves into that mold and become that person that we want to become ourselves, that authentic person that we want to be. It can't be somebody else's mold. I think too often we get stuck on trying to fit ourselves and pour ourselves into somebody else's mold for who we're supposed to be, rather than our own mold for who we want to be in our own lives.
Yeah. And I think we're at a point in the year that it's perfect to really think about these things, right? Put some definition around what it is for you. Who is your authentic self? Go through the exercise and sit down and think about that. Right? Who do you want to be? What does that look like? How does that person operate? You know, think about situations that you're presented with. How do you react in those kinds of situations? And start to put some of that definition around it for yourself.
And once you start to define it, now you can start to become it, and you can start to share that out and share it authentically. Now, when you understand who you are as a person, you don't have to think about how am I going to present myself online or in this situation when I meet this person. Now you can just be you, and you don't have to worry about some kind of fake persona that you've built up because you think that's what people want to hear from you. You think that's what people want you to be. That's the biggest danger. I see it with my kids. Like at 16, we're constantly trying to figure out how we fit into the world and who we're supposed to be and what's going to make people like us. And for a long time, I thought that ended when you were in high school, but I've seen it more and more with adults that it doesn't end with high school. We're all 16 still. At 47, I'm 16, trying to figure out if people are going to like me or not, because I still care. If I could break that down and say, this is who I am, this is who I authentically am, this is the genuine version of me, I hope you like it. And if you don't, that's fine. Go find someone else that you do like. You like their authentic version of themselves, but this is who I am, and I'm going to own that, and I'm comfortable with it.
And that's going to change over the course of time, right? Who you are today isn't who you're going to be at the end of 2023 if we're putting in the work, right? If we're doing the things that are going to make our lives better and make and achieve that personal excellence, we're going to be different today than we were yesterday. And we're certainly going to be different at the end of 2023 than we are at the end of 2022. It can't be any other way.
Think about that process for a second. You plant a seed in the ground and it starts to grow. And what it starts to grow into is very different than the seed that you planted in the first place. And then you allow that seed, you water it and you fertilize it, and you do all the things that it's going to take for that plant to really grow and be strong. That plant's going to grow, it's going to get taller, it's going to get wider. All of a sudden, what it looks like in 3 years looks absolutely nothing like what it started with. It goes through that whole growth process, and we're all doing that, especially if you're committed to putting in the work and becoming the person you want to become, which is going to be challenging. We talk about this all the time. It's going to be challenging. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to force you to do some hard work. If you do those things, you're going to grow into something completely different. And that authentic version of yourself that you're becoming is going to look different in a year. At the end of this coming year, you're going to look different than where you started.
There's a graphic out there that talks about, success. And I'll apply that to what we're talking about here from an authentic perspective, right? If we want to be somebody different than we are today, that line to success or getting to that point isn't straight, right? That graphic of a squiggly line to success is exactly what it is, right? We're all going to fail at some point, and we're going to regroup and we're going to move forward. And just know that it's never too late to start. Just because we're having this dialogue today at the beginning of the year, my hope is that some of you have already started this process. I know I have. I know I'm a different person today than I was a year ago. And I'll be a different person tomorrow than I am today. But we always are able to adjust our actions appropriately. We get to be in control of that. We get to choose that destiny. And the key is that I need to win today. Forget about tomorrow. Forget about a week from now. I need to win today. If I can win the day, if I can achieve those 5 things that I want to achieve today, I've won. If I can check that box, I've won the day. And if you can check those boxes consistently day in and day out, you'll win.
Not only will you win, you'll start to be internally happy with who you are as a person. That genuine version of you who checks boxes and does hard work and gets things done, you're going to be really happy to be around that person. You're going to be happy to be around yourself. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts we can have. And let's just lay this out. This can be really hard sometimes. There are days where you disappoint yourself. There are days where things don't go the way you planned. There are days where that squiggly line will take you down a hole and you're not going to like where you land. But you keep showing up, keep doing the work, and you position yourself in a place where you become resilient and you become somebody that you're really happy to be around. If you can't be happy to be around yourself, it's really hard for other people to be happy to be around you as well. So that's the first step to authenticity and becoming genuinely who you want to be, is figuring out how to be happy with yourself. how to be content with yourself, how to be okay with yourself on those days where things go sideways a little bit.
Yep. There's always going to be those challenges that we're faced with, and how we deal with them is really what builds our character, right? I've said that before. It's not the situation that defines the person. It's how you deal with that situation that defines your character.
You have conversations about, and especially this time of year, about goal setting. And I think it's easy to look at goal setting, and this is where I want to be at the end of 2023, with eyes wide open. Like, everything is possible. There's unlimited potential right now between where you're starting today and where you want to be at the end of the year. The thing that we forget about that is there are going to be things that pop up along the way, challenges that pop up, struggles that pop up, a lot of things that are unexpected along the way that want to get between us and our goal. And we need to anticipate those. We need to see them coming so that when they do pop up, we're not shocked by them and they don't stop us dead in our tracks. Like, there are going to be things that pop up this year that are going to make achieving your goals challenging. That's just, it is what it is.
Well, and let's take a step back on goals then. And let's really talk about those goals. Goals, generally speaking, are a pipe dream. It's where we want to get to. And unless we can define the critical tasks required on a daily basis to achieve that goal, the chances of us failing to achieve it are great. But if I can break it down into tasks that I need to do every day, every week, every month to get there, I'm going to be much more successful and much more successful in achieving that goal.
You brought that up in the last episode where you talked about operationalizing your goals. And it's over the last week, as I've been thinking about that conversation and listening back on it a little bit as well, it really hit home. The need for us to operationalize, put systems and processes in front of our goals, and really, like, it's not enough to just have a goal. You need to figure out the steps and create a plan that you're going to do consistently. Small things consistently, 99% of the time, are the path toward the goal that you want to achieve. But you need to lay that out where you can see it, and then you can measure it, and you can say, okay, am I still on track or am I off track? And then to be really honest with yourself and authentic with yourself when you're on track and when you're off track. We need to be able to have conversations with ourselves when we do go off track to say, okay, I'm going to get back on the path, and I'm going to get back into my routines, and I'm going to get back that momentum that I had that maybe I lost for a little bit. I'm going to get back into it.
When you get back into it, what are you going to do? How are you going to get yourself back? How are you going to get back to that point?
I think it's like falling off your bike when you're a kid, right? When you fall off your bike when you're a kid, you get scun up, your knees get bruised. You get, like, I remember having an accident when I was a kid on a bike, and both of my knees were full of tar and rocks and stuff. I ended up in the emergency room, and I have this vivid memory of the nurse coming in with a toothbrush. And she had this stuff she was going to put on the bruises, some antiseptic and some numbing stuff. And she took a toothbrush and she brushed out my knees, right? And I was pretty banged up. Like, it was an emergency room trip. I was sore. I had to get back on the bike. And the longer that I kept waiting to get back on my bike, the harder it was going to be. And I think that's the first thing. When you get off track, you fall off the bike, so to speak. The faster that you can get back on the bike, the better. The longer you wait, the harder it's going to be. You're going to have moments over the next year where you're working on a goal and you find yourself on the ground. You fall off the goal. And the faster that you can get back up, brush yourself off, and get back on the bike, get back into the goal and get moving again, the better. I think that's the big key for me, is just, you're going to fall down, get back up.
Yeah. And limit that, just as you said, limit that time that you're off, right? It's easy for me to go to say that, in a gym aspect, right? There are those days, those weeks where you just don't feel like going to the gym, right? You need to give yourself a mental and a physical break. And it's okay to do that. right? It's okay to give ourselves a break in many aspects of life, right? Sometimes those breaks are clarity. Sometimes they're just a healing process, right? And we need to make sure that we have those in place, and they're going to happen. And sometimes they happen on their own, and sometimes they're planned. But the reality of it is, just as you said, do not let days, weeks, months pass, right? Try to limit that to a couple of days, 2-3 days of not doing those critical tasks, having that discipline. If you can limit that to a couple of 2-3 days, you can get back on and keep riding. You go beyond that 2-3 days and it starts to get pretty darn tough. Now you got to go through that. You got to start at the beginning, right? And you've got to get your mind all tied back into it, wrapped up, go back to your discipline. It's going to happen, right? We're going to fail. We all do it. Just limit the time that you fail, right? Talk about that in business. Fail fast. Have a new idea? Fail fast. It's not going to cost a bunch of money to do that. If I do it fast, if I'm dragging it out and, it takes years, to come up with this new concept, a new idea, and then I fail with it, that costs a lot of time and money. But if I can fail fast and get back on with a new idea and move forward with something else, I'm going to have more success.
I think a lot of that ties back to as well, maintaining momentum. So probably 8 years ago now, Christina and I ran Grandma's Marathon. We run the marathon. I proposed to her at the finish line of the marathon. And then we spend the next 4 or 5 months planning this wedding. We had trained really hard to get ready for the marathon. We were ready when we got there. We ran a good race. And then once the wedding planning hit, we quit running. And so all of that momentum that we had built up and kind of where we were at physically, we were in a good spot, and then we quit. And a lot of that progress that we had gained and the progress we had made dissolved pretty quickly. It would have been a lot easier to keep that momentum going and continue to stay fit where we were at than it was to come back to it 3 years later when we hadn't done as much work and to try and regain it. Once you get some momentum going, do what you can to keep it going. That's going to be the big thing. Over the next handful of months, you're going to start to gain some momentum. And then you're going to have those days where something falls off, you get a little bit off track, you get a little sideways, get back on, keep the momentum going. That's huge.
And it's easy to fall into that trap though, right? You get some momentum, you're feeling a little bit better, the scale might be moving, your clothes might be fitting better. You've closed a couple of 2-3 deals at work. You've made success on a project at work, whatever that happens to be, right? Whatever those goals are, you're going to get feeling good about things. And then you're going to say, well, I don't need to do those critical tasks anymore, right? I can kind of back off a little bit off the accelerator. That's when the challenge comes in. And that's when you need to dig deep. That's when you need to double down. That's when you really need to focus on those critical tasks and stay focused on them and stay consistent with them. It's the hardest thing is to be consistent over the course of time. It's where the greatest success comes from. It's consistency.
The interesting thing about consistency is it ties directly back to authenticity. Authentic people are consistent. Exactly the compliment we started with. You're always the same. You're consistent with how you show up at work and how you show up when we're out having fun. You're consistently you. That's what authenticity is. It's consistency. And when we get consistent about who we are, how we show up, the work that we do, we maintain that consistency in all areas of our lives, then people don't have to wonder who we are. And they don't have to wonder if we're BSing them the way we showed up in this situation versus how we actually are when nobody's looking.
And we don't have to worry about that. We don't have to constantly think about, well, what group am I going to talk to today? And how do I need to act in front of these folks? Right? If I'm authentic all the time, it doesn't matter. And guess what? You're not going to make everybody happy. And that's okay. Not everybody is going to be on the same page as you. And that's okay. Don't let that deter you from being authentic and being who you want to be, achieving your goals.
As we move into this coming year, as we're starting this year, as we're starting to work on goals and do all the things we want to do in 2023, maintaining our authenticity has got to be core. It's got to be the core part of what we're doing, being genuine with other people, but also with ourselves. We have to do that. And that's what's going to lead you down the path to achieve your goals. It's what's going to get other people on board to help you achieve your goals. When they know they can trust you, when they know you're the person that you present, then they don't have to wonder about who they're helping, and they're going to be excited to get on board with you. Authenticity is at the core of everything you're going to do over the next 365 days. And it's going to dictate a lot of how you end up at the end of 2023 as we start to have these conversations coming into 24.
Be actually and exactly what you want to be. That's authenticity.
That's the challenge for you guys. Take that and run with it. Start running with it right now. Run with it through the whole rest of this year. Be that person that you said you were going to be. Show up as that person. Do the work that that person does. Be who you say you are. And then live that out every single day.
Yep. Back it up with your actions. No doubt. Be who you say you are and back it up with your actions.
100%. This is a good conversation, and I think it's a perfect place to start the year. I'm excited for what's to come in 2023 and where we're going to head, everyone all together. And if you're listening to this podcast and you're part of this Grit Meets Growth tribe, we want to thank you for being here as we start the year. We want to promise you that we're going to bring you valuable content through the course of the year. We're going to help you get where you want to go. We're going to help hold you accountable, and we're going to be part of your team.
And please, if you're finding value in these conversations, spread the word. Absolutely.
Our goal for this year is to grow Grit Meets Growth, to grow this tribe, and just continue to help way more people. That's what our aim is. Those are the conversations we've been having today about where we want to take this, and you guys are a big part of that. So thank you for sharing this. Thank you for being part of this, and thank you for where we're all going to go this coming year.
Now, be authentic. Go out there and get after it and make it a great day.
See you later, man.
That wraps it up for today's episode. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being part of the Grit Meets Growth tribe. And thanks for growing along with us and being part of this journey together. If you know someone who needs to hear the conversation we had today, please share it. If you got something out of this conversation, please leave us a review. And finally, if you want to make sure you don't miss future episodes, just remember to subscribe. We're thankful for each and every one of you. And as my co-host and good friend Chris Cathers always says, make it a great day.